During the 1930s, an uprising of animator strikes was ongoing. Animators had felt as if their rights were being violated. Movie production had slowed down, especially for Disney. One of the first strikes to happen at that time was the Fleischer Studio strike of 1937. Many of those ongoing strikes, such as the Van Buren protests and even growing conflict in Disney itself, caused a lot of panic in the animation industry, which made Disney only produce one movie during the 30s, that being Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Disney promised the animators who worked on the movie large bonuses and raises, but when it came to fulfilling such promises, Disney never followed through, even if they made over 4 times of what they expected. He instead spent it on a corporate complex in California. Some animators were getting $500 a week, while others only $12. Art Babbitt, Disney's best animator in 1941, tried to get his assistant a $2.50 raise, but could not.
I had tried to get a raise for my assistant, Bill Hertz, a $2.50 raise, and all hell broke loose. Went through all the various heads and authorities and so on, and finally got to Disney. I called him and wondered how come this assistant can't get a $2.50 raise. And that was when Disney said that, you and your communist friends, you don't know what the hell's going on in the rest of the world, and if he was worth it, he'd be getting it. And he says, that's why nobody likes you. That's what hurt me.
This had created the Screen Cartoonists Guild, otherwise known as the SCG. The SCG was a union formed in Los Angeles, California, designed to protect animators' rights and show studios' responsibilities. In 1937, the Screen Cartoonists organized their first meeting with Little John as the president, finding ways on how to expand on workers' rights at animation studios. One meeting, they decided to implement a formal constitution during the meeting in 1939. A small federation created by the SCG was called the Federation of Screen Cartoonists. By the 1940s, the group had over 100 members and was already representing workers at Metro Goldwyn Mayer and Walter Lantz Studios. They wanted to increase workers' wages through bargaining with the studio executives. Since due to the Great Depression, the higher rules of the studios had cut workers' pay but not their own to still have their own paycheck, which violated the rights of workers and was irresponsible of the executives. Many animators from Van Buren and Fleischer had flocked to the SCG because of this. One important animator who flocked towards this strike was Art Babbitt. He felt pity for the lower animators and leaned towards striking for them. He would also encourage others to join the strike.
The way I would organize people, I'd take each department, say the inkers, for example, and invite 8 or 10 of the inkers to my home. I lived Hollywood style in that time, and there would be lots of drinks and very nice dinner, and then I would make my union pitch.
Disney felt betrayed by this action. In January 1941, the SCG had started to meet at the Hollywood Hotel to gather complaints against Disney, and they realized that if they take down Disney, others would soon follow with paying workers fairly. On February 3rd, a charge filed by the SCG was set towards Disney, threatening a strike due to unfair practices towards working animators. Throughout February of 1941, the strike against Disney was being prepared with small actions, those small actions being things such as official officers being elected for the Disney unit with Babbitt being chairman, and having 25 people approve of the boycott for Disney unless if decided otherwise before March 15th. Disney was also officially put on a boycott list on March 3rd. Meanwhile in Disney, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was a big movie, but animators did not receive on-screen credits, which made animators even more upset. Tom Sito, one of the animators, remarked that work pressure was already building up due to promises in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs not being met. So this was not the sole reason. Quote, put your own houses in order. You cannot accomplish a damn thing by sitting around and waiting to be told everything. If you are not progressing as you should, instead of grumbling and growling, do something about it, Disney growled at the SCG. In the beginning of May, Disney fired a lot of animators, mostly SCG members, and the FCC and the Federation of Screen Cartoonists had almost dissolved. On May 27th, Babbitt was fired, prematurely starting to pull the last straw, and almost starting the strike even against advisory. The next day, Disney fired 14 animators, which had been the last straw and created a strike to motion on the exact evening. The next day, on May 28 and 29, the strike began. People were holding up signs that were saying 3 years of college, 2 years of art school, 5 years of animation, and what we get is a burger stand. Or I'd rather be a dog than a scab, and many others. Other studio animators also supported the strike. Some artists decided not to support the strike. Disney had given them a job during the Great Depression and insisted on being called by his first name. How can someone like that be a tyrant? Even when the non-strikers went to work, there was an infinite line of cars, and when passing the line, you would see 500 animators striking in a large circle in the entrance of the studio. About half of the entire studio. They would strike 24 hours per day at the picket lines with the signs from before with Disney characters on them. Babbitt told the Daily Worker that they were striking to get their promised raises and bonuses from Snow White that they never got. He also wanted more respect for the other workers and easier working conditions. Disney took the strike personally, so they drew the employees fired and then moved to the SEG as evil clowns in the style of Dumbo, which is a movie being animated during the strike. Meanwhile, the responding strikers did not seem to take Disney responses serious, keeping the circus clown vibe by using circus-themed humor at their strikes. But they even went as far to take a fake guillotine in a protest march and pretend to cut open a Walt Disney mannequin. Even if it was grotesque, they still had the right to do that with the helping supporting units on their side. Unlike Disney, who might have tried to hit one of the strikers on the picket line, which was not responsible of them at all. A few days in, the strikers had taken a spot near the studio to strike and stay out. They held celebrations and party games there to stay motivated on their goal, with the strikers calling it Camp Cartoonist and non-strikers calling it Skunk Hollow. Strikers helped themselves in other ongoing strikes, forming a large support team of perseverance. To try to get non-strikers to feel ashamed, Babbitt would sarcastically and loudly yell the non-strikers good morning on their way to work. On June 3rd, a letter signed by the 60 non-striking Disney animators had been sent to the U.S. president, requesting for intervention and a bargaining agent to come to a compromise with Disney and the SEG to try and make both sides happy. A month in, Walt and his brother refused to recognize the guild, and they still sharply insulted each other. The strike continued without violence, even if they were well into July and getting closer to poverty. Finally, on July 28th, 2 mediators from Washington, D.C. arrived. On August 2nd, the mediators ruled in favor of the strikers, saying that Disney needed to pay each individual striker 100 hours worth of pay, and that Babbitt needed to be rehired along with other animators. The Guild and Walt Disney had also made an agreement, where anchors would have their pay raised to $35 a week and animators would get paid $85 a week. Even after, Babbitt had gotten fired 2 more times before filing a civil suit for unpaid bonuses and raises, and a lawsuit for being fired 3 times for no reason. Babbitt lost his civil suit due to Fantasia and Pinocchio losing more money than they gained, which meant that Disney was not obligated to pay bonuses. But Babbitt won the lawsuit, which means that Disney had to pay Babbitt back for each time he was discriminatorily fired. In 1947, Disney tries to fire Babbitt for the 4th and final time, and the Guild gives Babbitt a large cash settlement before Babbitt quitting on the 16th of January. This strike showed that how even if there are larger and more prominent issues in the world, if you are passionate about what you are fighting for, you will fight for it even if risking so much. This revolutionized workers' strikes and improved conditions for generations of animators. This is one of the most important strikes ever in history and proves that to make a difference, you don't need to be violent.